Council meeting July 21, 2015 at the Lisbon Community School. I'm waiting for Mark.
I don't know if you can read it or not.
Dan,
He's going to ask.
good. How are you? Doing good. Good to see you.
Good evening. I'll bring the town council meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
July 21, 2015.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And the first item, please.
Councilor Garrison?
Present.
Councilor Lund is excused.
Correct.
Councilor McTevier?
Here.
Councilor Bickford?
Here.
Councilor Crafts?
Here.
Councilor Pesky?
Here.
Councilor Brunel?
Here.
Before we move on to the next item, I would open the floor for a motion to go into executive session for 1 MRSA Section 4056E, consultation with legal counsel.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? We will
Order
return.
passed. 6-0.
He can have it. Put on the water bottle. I'll bring the Lisbon Town Council meeting back to order. We came out of executive session at 7:47 with Councilor Bickford and Councilor Crafts making the motion. It was a 7-0 vote. And if we can move on to the next item, please.
Under good news and recognition,
Open the floor for any good news and recognition from council. Seeing none, next item, please.
is the public hearing, school budget public hearing.
Before we move on to the school budget public hearing, it appears that Mr. Green has a presentation.
Good evening. Just take a couple seconds to get this started. What I'm going to provide tonight, some of this is a duplication of a lot of the information I shared at the last public hearing, but I know that I've been asked. There are people in the audience who have asked questions, especially about definitions and different terms that are being used, because there are a lot of numbers and there's a lot of information. So I wanted to take this opportunity to go over and then try to explain some of the changes in this proposed budget versus the last proposed budget. Can everybody see that, or do you want me to turn the lights off up front? Everyone's good? The proposed budget this evening is based on the actually approved ED 279 figures that we just received on July 2nd, 2015. Some of the proposals that I'll share with you this evening, some of the proposals that the school committee made were actually prior to that. I believe it was June 28th. Was when we last met, and they approved their budget. So they had to send their information to the town council. So there is still some flexibility in this budget, but in order for that to happen, we haven't had an opportunity. The school committee hasn't had an opportunity to formally meet and make those changes. But I will share with you some of these new figures. The recommendations in this proposed budget include an overall budget increase of 3.5%, or $531,199. The total budget, including adult education, is $15,469,738. As of today, this proposed school department budget would result in a 0% increase in the local taxes and provide an additional $65,421 in subsidy for the 2016 and 2017 budget year. And that was a result of, if you've been watching the news, you'll see that the state budget was just approved, and they added additional funds for schools. So I think ours was around 120-something thousand. So the numbers that you'll see in front of you for the handouts, you'll see that some of those numbers have changed, and it's a result of us adding that additional subsidy and taking out some of the revenue, in particular the use of the capital reserve funds, the amount of the original amount, which was over 100,000, and we've reduced that. So that's an overview of the budget this evening. The elements of this presentation includes terminology related to what the total budget is, what the state contribution is, the total local funding, which is an important part of the process, including the directive from the town council, what the local contribution is. I do have the budget history and budget history graph charts. Those are the same. The bond proceeds, which is a topic that that'll be, I know it's on the agenda tonight. It's been pretty much the difference in the two budgets between the town council and the school committee in regard to the use of those funds. The capital reserve, again, it is in this budget. However, as I mentioned in our business meetings, I like the fact of just approaching the town council with separate requests for the use of the capital reserve. And in this case, because it's the guaranteed performance contract, Kathy can probably explain in better detail, but we needed to report it because it is built into the budget. We have to put it in this budget, and so we had to report it as revenue. Undesignated amount, the difference in that, I have learned that there is, people have had questions about what the undesignated amount is. And the variables, although they're much fewer than what they were a few months ago, there are still a couple of variables that can be positives and negatives for our budget. The total budget for the Lisbon School Department is a combination of state and local contributions. The total amount of this proposed budget includes adult education, and that's important because a lot of our numbers, if you look at our subsidy reports, you'll notice that the school department's at the top, and then adult education is right below that. You have to combine those two numbers to get an accurate figure on how much our total budget is. The state contribution currently is $8,992,653, which is a 2.7% increase from last year. The local contribution remains at $5,689,788, and that's a 0% increase from last year's budget. And the total budget, and this is the number that's used a lot, is our budget. The total budget is twice as much as the town's budget, but our total budget is a combination of those two. The amount that you are responsible for locally in property taxes is the local contribution. But the total budget, again, is $15,469,738, which is an increase. And the majority, I'll go over the parts that require that to be an increase. The parts that are impacting our budget, even though there is an increase, the majority of those increases are a result of pieces of these certain elements. The biggest piece is the debt service, and currently there's an amount of $304,551 increase in our debt service, and that's a direct result of the track and the gymnasium, which again was voted on by the community. Salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits are around $219,795. The biggest piece is that the movement or the changing of the finances in regard to Maine State retirement. There's an increase of around $67,447, which I actually, if you remember my presentation from last year, you'll know that I thought that was going to be closer to about $180,000 this year. So although it's lower, it's still an increase. And then the performance contract is $43,259. So I know that there were some special education costs that were added to the budget as well, but for the most part, these are the driving elements behind the budget and why we had an increase. The state subsidy, again, our total state subsidy increased $225,670, and the majority of that money, all but 60-something thousand, which I'll share in a second, is included in this budget. State subsidy is determined by a combination of different funding formulas. The essential programs and services is a topic that we've been talking about, especially when you look at the total additional local funds. Again, the essential programs and services looks at the teachers, guidance, librarians, health, ed techs, library techs, clerical, and school administration. The amount that we're above EPS is currently $334,074, and a majority of that is, again, in athletics, co-curricular, teacher retirement, substitute pay, and nutrition, because nutrition is not budgeted, or we don't receive subsidy from the state for nutrition. The transition amount, people have asked what the transition amount is, and that is the difference of the 55% funding formula required by law. And because the state doesn't meet their funding, the requirement by law of funding 55% of public education, you as taxpayers are responsible locally to raise that additional money. And so as a result, the transition amount is $293,819. The total local funding, again, as I shared, is $5,689,788. This is the amount that you raised through taxation, and it's not an increase from the prior budget from last year's. Historically, everything is flatlined because we kept the numbers the same, but you can see the difference since 2008, 2007, 2008 for both the local contribution and the budget history. Now, the most important piece this evening, or one of the more important pieces, is that in January, the Lisbon School Department was issued the directive to cut $600,000 from the total additional local funds line. And so there's been lots of conversations and discussions related to what that means. The biggest thing that I wanted to look at is when I looked at the town council budget and how they handle things, and I know I talked with the chair today and exchanged some emails, I think it's important because we were focused on the total additional local funds from the prior year's budget. And so if you look at that and you actually make a cut, the $600,000 cut was reducing the amount of money from that prior year's budget. If you actually look at what was proposed in February and where we are actually now, you'll see that originally we were at $1,246,851, and today we're down to $627,893. So if you look at what we proposed and where we are right now, we actually did cut $618,958 in total additional local funds. So it just is how you look at it. If you compare it to the prior year's budget, then it's $490,000. If you compare it to the numbers this year, then it's actually a $600,000 reduction. The next item, which has been controversial since coming out in February when we first presented, is the fact of the use of the bond proceeds. And there's been a lot of misinformation in regard to how we were going to pay for that. And the biggest thing is that in June, on June 10th in 2015, the community approved the referendum, both of those projects, for both the track and the gym. And as a result of all the hard work and close scrutiny that we've put into this project, and the fact that we took advantage of the market, both projects the track is already completed, the gymnasium is currently about 60-something% complete. By the time this goes to referendum, we'll be around 85% complete. But both projects will be coming in under budget. It's not a result of flooding the bonds and going out and asking for more money than what we needed. We have documentation that does show that the track originally was estimated at around $600,000. The architects went out and hired a special assessor to determine what the project would be, and they estimated it coming in at 5.9. And of course, this is after we'd already gone to referendum. So what we did with the gym is we made different alternates. We pulled those alternates out, hoping to get better pricing. One of those examples of that is the equipment inside the gym. We saved over $20,000 by pulling that alternate out. and going out and getting it. We actually had it, it's going to be shipped and installed directly from the vendor. Other areas that we looked at is the renovations to the existing locker rooms. Because we're in a situation where our budget and project will come in under budget, we're able to do a lot more renovations to the existing locker rooms than we originally anticipated. We originally put in around $50,000 or so for contingency funds to do the renovations, and we were just going to put in paint, some tile, but we figured when we look at the entire project and the fact that we've been pretty fiscally responsible, we're going to be able to go in and redo the actual showers and a bunch of other things, and it will look very similar to the quality or as new as the renovations that are taking place. So again, there's been information out there in regard to where the project is. Obviously, when we presented this earlier, the project wasn't nearly close to being done. And as I said before, it'll probably be over 80%, 85% in August. And the completion date is still tentatively set for, that should be September 25th and 26th. Now the issue is, there's been questions about the use of the bonds as a bond proceeds in regards to the payment. And in April, the town manager had actually contacted our attorneys and received an email in response that would outline what those proceeds could be used for. And they can be used for the actual scheduled bond payment. Now, what you've seen in different letters is the fact that we are trying to possibly prepay those bonds. You can't prepay bonds. You can't have extra money and throw it towards a bond because they make their money off. They set the interest rates on those bonds, and they expect a payment for so many years, so you can't pay them off early and save interest. We're not asking to use these funds, and I know this is obviously probably the biggest topic this evening. We're not asking to use those funds early. We're asking to wait. The project will be done in September. The scheduled bond payment's not due till November. And again, the school committee is looking to take the risk of saying or assuring that those bond proceeds will be available there, and that's why we're still building them or incorporating them into our budget. So again, it's not illegal. It's something you can use those payments or those funds for, and to be honest, it's actually something that they would suggest, because you do have to use the funds. Anything remaining, you do have 3 years that they expect you to utilize those funds. The Capital Reserve Fund, originally over the last 2 years, we've built our budget. We've added capital reserve. It was when the town council approved it, we used those funds. I actually as I mentioned before, I actually like presenting the projects to the town council, even though it's more work. It actually provides a lot more documentation. And so as long as we came up with a new policy, we created the policy to state that it has to be part of our capital plan, all these different pieces. And so even though this particular budget, this will be the last budget that we build it in. This budget has $43,260 from the Capital Reserve Fund built into it, and that's because of the performance contract. And that all comes down to reporting the performance contracts in there. It's a 1-year fee. If you remember, the first year, because they're still in the process of installing all the equipment that are going to save us the money and energy. You probably won't see those energy savings the first year. The performance contract bond is due, I believe, in December. And so as a result, we had to build in $43,260 into this budget. So that will go away. And that's what you want to use the capital reserve for, is anything you pay for with capital reserve, you want it to be a one-time fee, and then you pay it, and then it goes away, so that you're not, because otherwise we'd have to find $43,260 in next year's budget. But again, this article, I know there's a separate article for this, but this item is actually, it was voted on twice, so we don't even need, it doesn't matter. You don't need to add that to this budget. The undesignated funds, this is something that's come up quite a bit. The undesignated funds for us are a little bit different than what's been utilized by the town up until the last 2 years. For us, the undesignated funds are what we end our budget with. And so any money that's left over at the end of the year, we would then either transfer some of that into capital reserve, which we've done, or we have used the money to initially build our budget. So any of the money that we use for capital, or I'm sorry, for undesignated, is actually money that's left over. So if we put it in to the account, we only use what we put in. We don't use additional money. And so it's not quite the same as what's been used, what undesignated has meant through the municipal budget over the years. This budget is built on $212,692 of undesignated amount, which is an increase of $94,481. And that was the result of an audit issue. There was a software issue or something where they didn't calculate the $94,481, which was our use of the capital reserve money the prior year. As I mentioned before, the variables that are still left are there's not as many as there was obviously a few months ago. Some of the pieces, positive and negative, is always special education enrollment. If you have students that transfer into the system or transfer out that require any type of extended services, whether that's in district or out of district, that can be a major variable in any budget. And the other piece is unanticipated revenue. We don't, when it comes to main care, et cetera, we don't try to figure out how much money we're going to get each other. We don't build our budgets on that amount. So when that money does come in, what we have historically done is we've looked at those funds and then just transferred them into the capital reserve so that we don't have to go to the community every year and say we need money to renovate or do some of the work that we're doing as part of our capital plan. So quickly, in summary, the budget this evening is based on actual numbers from our ED 279, which is the form the state provides us that gives us all our subsidy and et cetera. And again, the recommendation this evening, the proposed school department budget would result in, again, a 0% increase in the local taxes and provide an additional $65,421 in subsidy for the 2016-2017 budget.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Green. Before I open the public hearing for the public, does anyone from the council have any questions you want to ask on the presentation? I have two quick questions I'd like to clarify first. The first one, I'd like to look at the state contribution. On the 15-16 subsidy comparison sheet, we have $8,992,653. When I looked at the I talked with the Department of Education today. They provided me with a report that said the state contribution is $9,058,073.50. So I was wondering if you could clarify those two numbers for me.
Yes, that's the difference. We did not utilize all of the state subsidy in this budget. As I mentioned before, this budget presented tonight, there's going to be $65,421 that would be carried over into next year's budget. And that was a result of the fact that the school committee had already met, approved their budget, and submitted it to you. So there's an additional $65,421 in subsidy.
Thank you. The second one that I have is regarding the local contribution on the subsidy comparison. We have $4,477,661, and on this report I have, it shows of $4,412,240.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, the report I have from the Department of Ed shows the local contribution being $4,412,240.17.
The required local contribution?
Yep, local contribution.
And we have $4,477,000.
Correct. So I was wondering why
Say
there was
that
an
you $4,412,000, correct?
$4,412,240.17.
Okay, that is Kathy. Okay.
The way is this on? It's on. Hi, I'll swallow it. The way the subsidy works is that If the state subsidy portion goes up, if that increases, then the local portion went down. So you saw that it went up to 9.0 million. The 4.4, the amount that you're talking about, should be an equal reduction. They offset each other.
I'm still not clear on it. Can you paraphrase it a different way, maybe?
Because we didn't use the state subsidy, like the prior, the subsidy report you have in front of you, because we didn't use all the subsidy, that number, the local contribution will be higher. If we used all the state subsidy in this budget, then the local contribution would go down.
So,
It's the $65,421 that I keep referring to as being carryover for next year's budget.
so if the council was to decide tonight to use all of the state subsidy, then we would reduce the local contribution to the number provided from DOE.
Correct. And it
All
would be a decrease in taxes of $65,421. Yep.
Perfect.
We just didn't have an opportunity to have that conversation because the numbers came in after they'd voted on their budget.
Perfect, thank you. That clarifies my two questions that I have. Anyone else from council have anything? All right, now I'll open the public hearing for folks that would like to address the council regarding the school budget. This will be a limited public hearing this evening. It won't be continuous as the last public hearing was. So what I would ask that if you address the council, you keep your remarks at 2 minutes or less. And if you want to repeat the same thing that somebody else already stated, please don't come to the podium for that purpose. I'll also ask that you state your name and address for the record, and we will get started. I'll invite the first person to the podium. Mr. Willie. It's on.
Dean Willie, Lisbon Falls, 30 Oak Street. What happens to the $60-something thousand if the town council votes on what the state approved or the state gives us? What happens to that $60-something thousand? I'm confused. What happens to that? It was included. It was going into next year. I'm just confused. That's all.
I would assume that would roll over to next year as. Yep. Next person.
Hi.
Hello.
Kelly Rogers, 32 Mill. I came to the last town council meeting, and when I addressed my concern about the lack of response to the school committee's offer to meet as in a workshop session to talk about the budget and work that through, I was told that one counselor did respond. And I guess as a community member, I want to express my displeasure with that number. I think it's pathetic that such a large number of people voted the budget down, which was screaming to you that we're not satisfied with what you're proposing as a budget, and only one person responds. The response to me was that 4 people needed to basically care, and I think it's really disheartening as a community member that didn't happen. I also really want to talk about EPS, and through all these meetings that I've attended, EPS, it feels like that's not clearly understood. EPS is not a goal, it's a rock bottom. It doesn't provide all the services that need to be provided for our students. So I just hope that you kind of keep that in mind, that we're not much above EPS. I think it was, 3-something%? It wasn't much. So that's reduced, and I'm expressing my displeasure as a community member with that fact in itself. I would personally like to see it more. I think that what we have for a budget is sorry. I think it needs to be more to give our kids what they need. I just feel I've expressed over and over again that I'm not the only person here that cares about our kids and our schools, and it's really frustrating to come to these meetings and see how unwilling these two, well, it's not school committee reached out, but how unwilling the town council is to work with our school committee to really do what's best for our town and support our schools. So.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Rachel Ruling, 29 Spring Street, Lisbon. I know we're supposed to be addressing you guys, but I had a question about some information that you gave out that I was confused about. The $1,246,851 from February 23rd that we have reduced to $600,000, and so it should look like, hey, we met you halfway. I'm confused as to what we actually reduced to get there and where that number came from. I missed something.
No, that number, when you look at the budgets, and if you start looking at, we've been focused on last year's numbers and trying to reduce last year's numbers. If you look at how on the municipal side, when they move money from the regular budget into the revenue sharing, and then counted it as new revenue, and then deducted that from their overall increase to create their cuts, they actually were comparing the numbers from the 15-16 budget. And so that's what we did. If you look at it that way, look at it 15-16 versus looking at 14-15, you'll see that the reductions that we made in our budget so far have reduced the total additional funds by that amount, which the goal or the directive was $600,000. As far as the individual numbers, what's changed since February, we've reduced, there was a community resource coordinator that was reduced to half-time. There was a teaching position that was reduced, and then we made other cuts in different areas. I don't have the full list, but I was just trying to compare. I was trying to compare apples to apples. If you're looking at different budgets, it's one thing to say you cut $300,000 from the 14-15 budget, but when you look at the 15-16 budget, it's two different things. I'm not sure. I confused you anymore, or
Yeah, just a tad.
okay.
So are you insinuating that the 15-16 budget you expected to be higher than what we had for 14-15?
Yeah, it was higher.
So you were anticipating that each year we're just going to get more?
No. What we put in is all the increases that I presented this evening. The increases with, for instance, the debt service was $300-something thousand. Salaries and benefits, which are about 70-something% of our budget, which are controlled through collective bargaining and stuff. The other piece was the performance contract. So if you add those four items together, you'll come up with a number higher than the actual increase that we presented. So no, I didn't go in asking. We don't do wish lists with the administrators and directors. Don't come in and give me a wish list. What we look at is what we need. And to be honest, what we felt is at the time it was a maintenance budget, just because, with the exception of the debt service, everything else is pretty much almost out of the debt service and the performance contract. Those two items were controllable, but they were voted on by the community. The other items, salaries and benefits, and the Maine State retirement, those are kind of out of our control. So it wasn't additional. We didn't ask for additional money and then cut it and made it look like that we made these cuts. I didn't even bring that up until this evening, the whole $600,000, because I know that's been a big issue of contention between the two committees.
And earlier he had stated that it had been clarified through, I believe you said your council, that the extra money from the gym could be used to pay it down. Are you guys in concurrence with that information that you received, or are you still disputing it?
I would not say we are in concurrence. Legal counsel has advised us of otherwise at this point.
Okay, so we still don't agree. Good to know. Thanks.
You're welcome. Next person, please.
Lorraine White, 2 Miller Road. I think the town, during the last vote, was clear in indicating that we feel that the school budget is too low. We would like to see our children supported. And when I've come to these meetings before, and the town council has spoken about your hesitancy, you've been unclear as to why you've wanted these cuts made, but what you have spoken about is that you're concerned, what I've heard from a few of you, is that you're concerned about the older population in town, you're concerned about their taxes. And so I guess what I'm wondering is if it's the older population in town that you're concerned about, why, it feels like you're pitting the children against the elderly population. Why are you going after the kids? Why aren't you looking at solutions for the elderly population? Why aren't you looking for remedies to their tax problems? That's something that you could do. Why are if you attack our children and you attack our schools, you're not going to have a generation that's going to stay here and be educated and support a tax base in the future. My child is going to be, in 15 years, she's your tax base. If she's not educated and she's not here, then what are you going to do? Who's going to support you in 10 and 15 and 20 years? So what are you going to do? What are you going to do for the elderly population? You need to come up with a more longer-lasting plan than to just cut your future tax base. What are you going to do for your elderly people? It seems like that's what it seems like you're very short-sighted here. What are you going to do in the long run to come up with a solution to this? Look at, if someone's lived here for 20 years, give them a tax break. Think outside the box rather than cutting our town off at the knees.
Thank you. Next person, please. Yes, ma'am.
Aileen Staley, 244 Lisbon Street. I am an elderly person at this point, and I've lived in this town for 13 years and been associated with it a little longer. I just want to say I know a lot of senior citizens in this town, many of them. I see them regularly, and I think it's a real false assumption to assume that most people who are older do not support the schools. And I just would want to say, as a senior citizen, that I do support the schools and would like the school committee, I would like the town council to support the school budget.
Thank you. Next person, please. Ms. Austin.
I know that a question was just raised about your position on the bond proceeds. In the minutes of May 5th, 2015, Councilor Pesky, you had a piece of information that you discussed that he, being the legal counsel, he explained legal counsel indicated the bond proceeds can be used to pay for the mortgage payment on the bonds and that the town would have 3 years to spend the leftover money. He pointed out, however, that it was risky and to be able to be done before the project is completed. And so I don't understand where the confusion is, where we are not asking to pay the payment early and that we are using to use the bond proceeds at the end of the project. And your own counsel has said that it is not illegal to do so. So I just wanted to clarify that point, that it seems to be there's still some issues on lawyer versus lawyer. But both in all the readings and documentations that I've received from your counsel and my counsel has stated that it is not illegal to do.
I would also add to that clarification. First off, for the public, Attorney Stockford is not our bond counsel. We have different bond counsel that is independent. So when we reference legal counsel, it is not Brandon Isaacson. It is through Eaton and Peabody. Our legal counsel has advised us that although it is not illegal to do so, it is risky. And they have advised us to stay away from it and not to use those proceeds until the project is complete. They've also advised us not to even discuss those proceeds or include it in the budget because it will not be completed when the budget is voted on by the council or adopted by the citizens. They do recognize that at a later point, once the project is complete, in a new budget or later on, to use the proceeds on a qualifying project before we use it for debt service. And that is a very clear conversation that we've had, that I know the council has all received that communication. And the next person, please. Seeing none. Oh, one more. Mr. Albert.
Norm Albert, 2 Cynthia Drive, Lisbon Falls. I just was curious, and you may not be able to answer this tonight, but a guess, my best guess would be fine. Would you guesstimate roughly how much we've spent, we being the town of Lisbon through council, maybe the school committee, on attorney's fees? Because I do believe those are taxpayer dollars. Is that right?
It is taxpayer dollars.
Okay, so taxpayer dollars. If I could just get a rough guesstimate what that number looks like, and if you can't give me that number tonight, that's fine, but it would be great if you could. I would take a guesstimate, because I think these people behind me would like to know that and see how that's affecting all of our pockets as well. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. I will respond to that with the council does not know how much we have spent on legal fees, how our, as I've explained to other people, how our legal bills are broken out. It does not show time frames, how long time was spent on each topic. It shows a category. So that if the council chose to investigate that further, we would have some process to go through, but we do not have a number at this point, and I wouldn't take the slightest guess or guesstimate because I would not, I would want it to be accurate. Mr. Fillmore.
We can actually, our attorneys break it down into what, for each item, so we do have, I just put Kathy on the spot, but she's, we can get that information for you, but it is expensive.
Mr. Fillmore.
Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. As I understand what you just said, Mr. Bessie, is that the proceeds can be used if the project is completed. Now, if the people vote this down this time, guess what? September 25th comes around. The project is complete, so they can use the money. So if they vote it down, what's the issue?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Doug Sauter, 39 Boneham Road, Lisbon Falls. Democracy is a beautiful thing. The town voted overwhelmingly. It may not have been a huge sample, but it doesn't matter if there was 10 people that voted or 1,000 people that voted. The vast majority of people that voted said it was too low. So I don't understand what the town council doesn't understand, that we as a town felt it was too low. We didn't like what you guys put forth. We voted it down overwhelmingly. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand it wasn't where the town wanted it. Maybe you, this little small group, disagreed, but the town thought it was too low.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Not at this point. Anybody else has not addressed the council? So none. Mr. Willie, you'll be the closing comment this evening.
Dean Willie, Lisbon Falls. I have a quick question. I'll address you, but they're going to probably have to answer it. How much has been spent on change orders as of the most recent numbers? How much is left over, for a lack of a better term, left over? And you said 60-something% of the project is done, and 80-something will be done in August, right? Correct. Okay, so can you just answer those 2 numbers or 3 numbers?
Yep, actually. Currently, I believe there is $78,000 that has been approved in change orders. The total amount of contingency throughout the entire project was around $612,461. We haven't yet approved the renovations to the existing locker rooms, but that'll bring it up probably to, that's probably going to add 100 or so thousand to the project. So we're looking at, as of right now, you probably have close to 400 and, with the remaining money for the track, I'm guessing you're 410,000 as of today.
Thank you. At this point, I will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to the next item, please.
Audience participation and response for agenda items.
Open the floor for any audience participation regarding agenda items. See none, close audience participation. And the next item, please. Yep.
Is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered next. Order 2015-198 to approve the regular minutes of June 16 and June 30, the workshop minutes for June 30, and the regular minutes of July 7th.
Open the floor for motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0. Oh, and we also have the catering permit for the Slovak Catholic Association for their Knights of Columbus picnic.
What
That
agenda?
was a revised agenda item I didn't see, forgot to include in your motion.
Okay.
So is it all right if we make a motion to approve
Yeah,
the
that's fine.
catering permit for the Slovak Catholic Association?
Who is it for?
The Knights of Columbus and the Slovak Catholic Association will be bringing the alcohol.
Okay. So you want to do both of them?
It's one permit.
Okay.
Off-premise catering permit.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0. Thank you.
You're welcome. And the next item, please.
The next item is under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2015-199, authorization to sign a planning contract.
This is just to authorize me to sign the one-year planning grant with Community Planning Studios. That's with Amanda Bunker. And she provides support to the planning board and also the Economic and Community Development Director. And it's in an amount not to exceed $20,000, the same as last year's grant, last year's contract.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-200, Dollar General water easement release deed.
The Water Commissioners have requested that this easement deed be released. They no longer have a need for the water easement at 167 Lisbon Street, as the water main now runs on the opposite side of Route 196. And we just need authorization for the town manager to sign the municipal release deed for land acquired by virtue of a deed from Clara E. Vosmus to the inhabitants of Lisbon dated July 22nd, 1922, and recorded in the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds and page 335, page 192.
Open the floor for motion.
I'll make the motion
To accept?
to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? And the next item, please.
Order 2015-201, tax acquired property bids.
These are the last two properties that I have to put out to bid. They've already been out twice with a minimum amount due on them. So this time I'd like to put them out with no minimum due to see what I get in for bids.
Open the floor for motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-202 to accept the school budget validation referendum results.
In our packet, we have the referendum from the validation on June 9th, signed by the clerk. Just need approval. Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-203, a discussion on bond proceeds and bond compliance.
Diane or Ed?
Ed.
All right.
I guess I'll have to function without a...
No, we don't.
You're dignity. Free. Thank you.
We need to take a break in 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, so I get,
break now?
before this point, we'll take a break. We'll reconvene in about 7 minutes.
There's way too many things that could go wrong.
It's going to be a very wet ride home. Yeah, you brought your motorcycle.
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay, folks, I'll bring the meeting back to order. If we can find our seats, please.
Go to my bike.
The meeting will be coming to order. Please find your seats.
Meeting back to order 6/21, 2015.
All my wood, my window, everything's out.
Okay, ready?
Just a second. All set with the recording?
We are.
Clerk, we're all set? Okay. All right, we will resume the meeting. We will start off with item 2015-203, discussion on bond proceeds and bond compliance.
Thank you. Distinguished members of the council, distinguished members of the school board. Nice to see you all here tonight. I'm here primarily to talk about the use of bond proceeds and compliance. My issue is not with the school budget. What the school board, the town, and the citizens of Lisbon ultimately do as far as appropriating, allocating, or supporting the school is strictly a decision that has to be made locally through the referendum process in the end. I have great respect for education. I have one kid who graduated from Bowdoin, top of the class. Another kid who graduated top of the class from Bates. Both of them went on to be attorneys. I feel that the education system in Maine has done well by them, and they have been able to profit by them with good education. But what I am concerned about as the finance director for the town of Lisbon is that I take care of and look out for the interests of all the citizens of Lisbon, all those who support the school, those who may not support the school, and those who are out there that actually have no opinion about the school. So there are distinct populations here in Lisbon. Each, I'm sure, has their own interests. My interest is, as the finance director, in fact, Lisbon does not get into trouble. Lisbon does not look upon on later bond issues that we might request as not complying with the laws, the IRS code, and the customary procedures on how bond proceeds at the end are handled. What seems to be at issue here and has been portrayed to the school committee and the public as a desire or misunderstanding that bond proceeds being applied prematurely in advance of the project as a prepayment. It was never on anybody's agenda. It was never spoken to in anybody's letter or testimony if they fully understood what was being said in all of the correspondence that I shared and in all of the discussion. The issue is that we not speak to committing bond proceeds that may or may not be available before the project is finished, or the use of any interest associated with the project, because the interest that the project earns, in fact, are deemed to be proceeds of the bonds. I keep hearing about Drummond and Woodson, the school's counsel, who also acted as bond counsel. There should have been an independent bond counsel. We hear about Drummond and Woodson's position on the use of proceeds. Drummond and Woodson is representing their client. Their client is, in fact, the school committee. I don't know how much per year the school spends with Drummond and Woodson, but I must imagine that it is a fairly sizable amount. Drummond and Woodson should be representing the school on matters of education law, federal issues that may crop up regarding special education, representing the school on various issues. Okay. However, we do have an attorney that represents the corporation, being the town of Lisbon. Administrative matters such as these should really be referred to the town of Lisbon's attorney, because after all, we are Lisbon, right? All the citizens of Lisbon. The municipal charter, the municipal ordinances, all have us as equal departments within the town of Lisbon's government. Right now, we in fact do have dueling attorneys. And as one citizen brought up, it does cost money. And unfortunately, the expenditure of the money is totally unnecessary if in fact, and I'll say it right out, Mr. Green and the school committee would comply with those things that they need to comply with regarding administration of the bond. The school department and the school committee have no legal authority in a municipal school setting to issue bonds in their own name. They have no legal authority to raise money. Okay? In a municipal school district, the law is very clear in 20A, Title 30, that in the end, it is the town council and the voters here in Lisbon that will ultimately determine the amount of money raised. I am 100% against committing proceeds that may or may not be left over from the gym project to be recognized in a budget at this time for expenditure. I'll call your attention to the correspondence that we did receive from Drummond and Woodson. Again, I found it very interesting that on the town side, Drummond and Woodson, acting as counsel on the bond, chose to share in an unauthorized manner the advice given to the town manager. What was the advice that was given? In a sequence of emails that begins around April 7th, 2015, the town manager at 12:05 p.m. poses a question to council. Can the proceeds be used toward the gym debt payment? The initial response from council on April 7th, 1:56 p.m., asks for time to answer and also inquires as to the amount left over. Town manager responds at 2:57 p.m. There may be $300,000 left over from the bond. Okay? On April 10th, 2015 at 9:23 a.m., this bond counsel responds in detail regarding the use of the leftover proceeds with a summation expressing uncertainty about the effects on the tax-exempt status of the bond issue. Okay? On April 22nd, 10:59 a.m., Mr. bond counsel, forwards the email to the school department's business manager. Consistent with the uncertainty in the body of discussion, Mr. Imes' concluding sentence says, "We also think it okay to put the proceeds to the debt service payment as you were planning to do." He thinks, however, there's uncertainty. There is a risk that the town may lose its tax-exempt status on the bond. From there, really the issue began to accelerate. Okay? My interest solely is based on my experience of 30 years in public finance and financially responsible for several $100 million in construction over time. Was concerned about just arbitrarily now deciding we're going to put the money toward debt service, because there are some restrictions on what can be done. There is some gray area. However, the gray area, although gray, if you understand how to read the IRS code, sometime before I hit my 70th birthday, I hope I can nail it down. But reading the code is not so much going to the code and saying, can I use it? It's more of a process of understanding what you have through reading the code and understanding what you don't have. Okay? So it's kind of a confusing, and that's why there are some varying opinions among bond counsels. Because we saw this unique relationship between the school and the original bond counsel, the town of Lisbon decided that independent advice was really necessary. And so we have retained independent counsel, Eaton and Peabody. The attorneys, the firm, has no other business before us or with us other than to provide advice at arm's length as to how the proceeds, in fact, should be disposed of. The conclusion of bond counsel is, in fact, that, and I think this is where the confusion by Mr. Green comes in, is that it is, yes, it is premature to be talking about how proceeds that have not yet materialized, even though the project is on track and would be completed, let's say, under budget, to pledge them for any other purpose other than the purpose for which they are intended, and that is the project. By the school department's own hand, the project budgets were in fact drawn up. The track, $500,000, pledged $450,000 to actual construction and $50,000 to contingent account. There is no discussion in the resolution of the bond, what went to referendum to the townspeople, that any amount of money at the conclusion of the project would be applied to debt service. The gym, if you look at the enclosures, also has a bond resolution, an arbitrage and use certificate, and accompanying documents that finance director, town manager in her capacity as treasurer, signed off on, that in fact had a budget of about $4.5 million, maybe a little more. I think it was $485,000 for architectural services, and over $200,000, maybe around $250,000, I think, for a contingency. Again, in the resolution of the bond, in the arbitrage and use certificate, In the referendum that went out to the people of the town of Lisbon, there was no mention of using proceeds, yet proceeds for project not finished yet, for any type of debt service. Where do people look for the appropriate use of bond proceeds? They look to the question sent before the voters, they look at the bond resolution, they look at the arbitrage and use certificate, which pledges the town, you folks as the issuer, Town Manager Barnes and myself as the signees on behalf of the town, to say how, in fact, we're going to use the proceeds. The original budget for the gym and for the track were drawn up in the spring of 2014. The original budget was submitted to the Maine Municipal Bond Bank with the application for the funds approximately June 10th. Work continued over the summer on refining the projects and actually starting projects. Architect had been retained, cost estimates had come in. On August 27th, the bond bank contacts, I should say, I think it was around August 14th perhaps, contacts the town of Lisbon and asks if there are revisions that need to be made to the budget. Revisions would include resizing of the bond, application of the proceeds, and anything else that had changed in the original application. Email was sent to the school by the finance director to the school department. The school department says no changes. The bond is sized, the bond is ready to be issued. Construction by August is nearly complete on the track. On September 8th in the school board minutes, the superintendent reports to the school committee that barring any more rain, the track project will be finished the following week. Let's take a look at the timeline. You have approximately 100 days of work that went in over the summer on both bond issues, culminating with a request for revision in budget in August. On September 8th at the school board meeting, barring rain, the project will be complete. How many days are there between August 14th and September 8th? How many days are there between August 27th and September 8th? Not many days. What concerns us, and concerns me particularly, is the timeline between the request for revision in the budget and the reporting of the status on the track on September 8th is less than 3 weeks. At that time, that project should have been known as to what the total cost would be. It is impossible to be within 3 weeks at the end of a project and not know what your final outcome might be. There's a concern of overissuance. That's one concern. We go on through the fall, and the bond gets issued for the gymnasium. I call your attention to the handouts that I've given you. Unfortunately, we don't have very good record with the securing of the contract. I took time to read the Justice's opinion. I researched all of the news articles. I read a little bit of the testimony. Clearly, somebody fell down on the job. There should have been more due diligence done and researched in light of the RFP that went out on how the bond would be evaluated and the regulations and laws governing the awarding of public contracts, being Title V, 1743, all the way through Title V, 1825. It is very clear that any public project over $250,000 will be awarded on the lowest bid, regardless. The school department makes arguments as to relationships with various contractors, architects, which in the end are baseless. And in the end, we end up with the contractor we have today. There should have been some probing questions on the school board side as well, understanding the responsibilities that you have under the town's charter and Title 20A. However, that is water over the dam. Interestingly enough, at the school board meeting on November 10th, we haven't put a shovel into the ground, we're not yet out of court, and we're already projecting that there will be a surplus in the project. In January and February, we start the budget process. And we're already pledging proceeds for a project at that time that is barely out of the ground. Now, over-issuance of flooding is all about appearance. And we certainly have the appearance of over-issuing. I tried to research, based on what I know about construction, what was going on in the market in 2014. And it wasn't a down market. It was your average market, construction. What I have not seen come forward from the school are any contracts, how the estimates were generated, other than, again, comment to Manager Barnes that the architect is insulted. My experience has been with construction that architects are very conscious of the market. They're very conscious of their clients' resources. And they do not tend to overestimate projects. Typically. And so if we were to do a comparison of what has typically been going on with bond issues for school construction, be it a gymnasium or other facilities, I inquired of the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, what is the experience? Excuse me while I search for the memo. Dear Tony, I must be your worst nightmare. Do you have any insight into the following question? I've had a request from several municipal officials for the following. Historically, what percentage of school-related construction projects are completed with approximately 10% of the bond proceeds left over at completion? not including the use of any proceeds for debt service. And historically, what is the average percentage of bonds proceeds unused at the completion of the project? Again, excluding the use of proceeds for debt service. And historically, what percentage of projects exceed the bond proceeds? And I go on to say, there's a little joke with her, I'm in a rubber room between the municipal side and the school side of Lisbon. This information is critical, so I hope the request may be accomplished without too much pain. A reasonable estimate would suffice. Hi, Ed. This is July 9th, 2015, 9:55 a.m. I don't have this type of detailed information to give you. I can tell you most clients of the bond bank spend their project funds to completion and rarely have any leftover funds to spend toward debt service. They produce accurate estimates during the application process to avoid over and under issuance, and usually have contingency plans, so if they do have funds available, now when we speak about over and under, there is a rule with the IRS that if you end up with proceeds left over of $5,000 or less, it's de minimis. You do whatever you want, pretty much. Okay? They usually have contingency plans, so if they have funds available at the end of the project, they can apply those funds to additional work within their realm of the approved project. If the bond bank does have a borrower with unspent proceeds, we handle this on a case-by-case basis, as our database does not track percentages. Herein lies the issue. We have a problem. Lisbon has a problem. You're about 7% over. You're about almost 9% over, but the revelation now of additional work to be done to the locker room at $100,000 is a revelation. I heard about it on the street as a rumor. I'm glad it's finally come out, because it does shed a little bit of light on how much is going to be left over. Earlier this week, I asked the school department, how much do you think will be left over, knowing that the change orders that you have had are already disposed of? I don't know if the $45,000 that's come up on the latest warrant is inclusive of the 78 or not. I'll have to kind of, I guess, look around to find information on that. I would still bet it'll be over $500,000 if we don't find other work to complete. So yes, the fact that we have such a high percentage left over could be a problem for us. So I discussed the risk of audit, and the response is modest at worst. The manner in which we're trying to apply the bond proceeds to your budget, in fact, isn't even the appropriate way. At the end of the project, should there be money left over, an escrow account will be set up. The unused bond proceeds would be moved into the escrow account, and in fact, then we would move them over to pay down debt service. And additionally, as I look at your budget, just as a point of interest for all of you, we should not be including leftover bond proceeds as revenue. We should not be including money that you're taking out of a reserve as revenue. It's kind of like me taking the 50 cents that my wife gives me for allowance or the 50 cents I have left over from last week's allowance, taking out of my right-hand pocket and putting in my left-hand pocket to get ready to spend on gum and calling it a revenue. At best, it's another financing source. So the true picture of how much your budget is really is understated, but that's a whole other issue. The most appropriate disposition of the bond proceeds at this point in time is to take the gym off the table, and to not speak of the gym again until it's complete. At that time, council always has the opportunity to reconvene, hold a public hearing, and talk about how the disposition of the bond proceeds should be handled. I am going tonight to blend a couple of discussions. I'm going to talk about the reserve. My advice to the council and to the school committee is that you reconsider the use of the $48,809 left over in principal, and the interest that has been earned, I think through the end of the month, is approximately $48,895 in that account. I would not sign the checks for the wiring, but I would ask you to give me a couple of days to finish my work with the Maine Municipal Bond Bank and Eaton and Peabody to be able to apply those proceeds that are unused toward the wiring project, the wireless network. That would be the highest and best use for those proceeds. And that's as far as you should go. And I would advise the school committee as well, that's as far as you should go. Until the gymnasium is finished, the certificate of completion is executed, the bond compliance is finished, and the closing package is complete. At that point, it is then appropriate to look at what other approved projects there may be. But right now, it is not appropriate to talk about the use of those bond proceeds, because there may be more change orders, and there may be changes in scope that we don't know are coming. The final issue that I have is one of great concern to me, and that is how much money that we're spending for all of this ridiculousness. We have one side who has its own attorney, who was found not to be independent. We've had to go out and get another attorney that is independent. We have had to reasonably interpret the guidance that we got from Drummond and Woodson, and they really said, geez, you know, I don't know, you could lose your tax exempt status, but sure, go ahead, apply to debt service. Or we can take the more reasonable approach, the more objective approach. The approach that is, for the lack of a better word, conservative and credible, and take the discussion of the gym bond proceeds off everybody's plate, and you guys work out the budget. Finally, we are the issuers of the bond, being town manager and myself. Something goes wrong, they're not going to go to the school committee. They will not go to the superintendent, to the business manager. But they will come to the town manager and myself, should anything go wrong. And as such, whether the school department and Mr. Green disagree, I have a role in that process. Because, after all, this is on behalf of bond issue. At This time, unless there are some changes in the behavior, and whether Mr. Green likes me and whether I like Mr. Green does not matter. We may really detest each other. And that is probably the case, given the tenor of the emails that I get. It's no secret that Mr. Green and I have had our differences, comments being made, but as the finance director, I have ultimate responsibility for those bonds and should not, in fact, be barred from the construction meetings. Mr. Green has gone so far as to request an opinion from the Attorney General's office as to whether or not I should be allowed to the meetings. So again, we have to engage the services of an attorney to give us an opinion. But let me share with you what I got back from the AG's office.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Not at this point. Not at this point. He is wrapping up. We're almost done. Thank you.
Dear Ed, the Freedom of Access Act, FOIA, identifies records and proceedings that must be open to the public. The fact that a school superintendent is having a meeting that is not subject to the public proceeding requirements of the FOIA means only that the public does not have a right to attend and observe. That has nothing to do whether you should be included in the construction meetings that you describe concerning the projects that are funded by bonds issued on behalf of the town. The advice given to the superintendent answered only the question that he asked, that is, whether those meetings are public under the Freedom of Information Act. Your attorney can best advise you of your right. So, again, we spin the dial. We have to have another opinion from the attorney. And if this is how Lisbon wants to spend its money, that's how you spend your money. I received the bond compliance documents back from our bond attorney who looked them over, basically is satisfied with everything that I have outlined in the bond package, in the compliance package. The only comment he had was regarding SEC compliance, and it really doesn't matter because SEC compliance would be left up to me anyways. It really doesn't apply to all bond issues, but I stuck it in the compliance package because it really needs to be there. So that is my position as the finance director of the town of Lisbon on how the bond proceeds should be applied and when they should be applied. Thank you.
I appreciate you giving us the detailed overview that many members of the council have been in to see you on. Before I ask any questions, I would open it up to the council to ask the finance director any questions regarding anything he just stated or any follow-ups. No. I have a couple of questions I'm sure you're not surprised by. You had stated that we wouldn't have to spend legal fees if the school committee and Mr. Green would comply. In my understanding of that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is if we followed what you have just projected and what our legal counsel for the bond proceeds have projected for the use of them. Is that correct?
That's correct, as well as the issue over whether or not the finance director is a public person or a municipal officer.
Okay. You mentioned concerns of overinsurance. And I was wondering if you briefly knew any consequences that could come if we were found of flooding or over issuing of bonds.
We lose our tax exempt status on the bonds.
Okay.
Additionally, we would have to enter into what's called a VCAT.
Okay.
And that it would be a voluntary corrective action plan with the Internal Revenue Service.
Okay. And then you had, although it is the next item on our agenda, but you already took care of it, discussion on the reserve funds. I think that is from reading the correspondence between bond council and the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, I think that is a good use of that excess track proceeds. And my last thing, I just wanted to state and reassure my position. I stated at the last council meeting, and I believe I can speak on behalf of the whole council on this, that currently you and the town manager are not signing any checks for the construction of the gym.
That is correct.
I want to reassure that I fully support, and I believe I can speak on behalf of the council, that we all agree that the request that we have, or the administration has sent to the school department for documentation has not been provided, and you have not been able to attend the construction meetings, the information that you need as a finance director and the town will need to do our post-issuance compliance. I reassure my position that I fully support no checks to be signed by the administration for the construction of the gym until compliance is gained from the school department relating these issues. I know it's a touchy topic. I know it's a critical topic, and at the end of the day, it looks bad on behalf of the town of Lisbon. But I think it's important that we cross our T's and dot our I's because of the mistakes that have been made so far, and ultimately they have been corrected. But we need to make sure that all of those things are continued on in the future. Everything is 100%. I reassure you that I support that position not to be signing any checks until compliance is gained. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point,
Am I going to be able to clarify?
not at this point. This is a discussion between the finance director and the town council. Order 2004, I believe Mr. Cross already addressed that in his item 203. So at this point, we'd move to 205, please. Not at this point. Not at this point, Mr. Fillmore. 205,
Order
please.
2015-205, the 2015-16 school budget warrant articles.
Okay. Does the council wish to do a roll call vote on this warrant articles as we have in the past, or do you just want to do a regular vote? Is anyone requesting a roll call vote? Okay. All right. Before we start on this on these votes, I just wanted to briefly clarify that I never thought that the perceived excess proceeds for the bonds were going to be used early. I was always under the impression and under the assumption that bonds cannot be paid early, and I never thought that they would be paid early. All right. I would like, once again, like we did last time, we'll take these out of order. In case there are any adjustments, we'll be able to chronologically take care of these. So I will, Madam Clerk, if we could move to Article 12 first, please.
Article 12. Article 12, to see what sum the council will authorize the Lisbon School Department to appropriate for the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act. Recommend $13,470,000 $314, and to see what sum the council will raise as the town's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Program and Services Funding Act in accordance with the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 15688. School committee recommends $4,477,661.
I would offer a motion for the council to approve $4,412,240. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
This will go back to my original question I had regarding the difference in the required local contribution. I think it's important that we take and use all of the state subsidy that will be provided, which will then increase the local contribution. Decrease the local contribution by that amount.
Can you repeat the number? $4,412,240.
$240.
Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Councilor Garrison.
Garrison, 5-1.
Next, move to Article 13, please.
Article 13, to see what sum the council will authorize the Elizabeth School Department to raise and appropriate for the annual payments on debt service previously approved by the legislative body for non-state funded school construction projects or non-state funded portions of school construction projects in addition to the funds appropriated as a local share of the school administrative unit contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12. School committee recommends $477,356.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make that motion
And can you just clarify the motion for the record?
to accept a recommended amount of $477,000. To recommend the amount of $477,356.
We have a motion from Councilor Mativia. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a second from Councilor Bickford. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And Article 14, please.
Shall the town of Lisbon raise and appropriate $627,893 in additional local funds, which exceeds the state's essential programs and services allocation model by $334,074 as required to fund the budget recommended by the school committee. The school committee recommends $627,893 for additional local funds and gives the following reasons for exceeding the state's essential programs and services funding model by $334,074. The school committee recommends $627,893.
I'd like to make a minute.
I'll open the floor for a motion.
That's all we do. I'd like to make a motion to recommend to raise the appropriate amount of $515,551 in additional local funds.
We have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
That amount is $551, is that correct? Thank you.
I would also state that I do support this. The municipal took $300,000 out of our goal we said we were going to do from last year's numbers, and I believe it's important for the school to be held to that same standard. All right, we have a motion from Councilor Bickford, second from Councilor Mativia. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
There's 5 in favor, all those opposed? 5-1. Motion passed.
And now I'd like to go to Article 19, please.
Shall the council of the town of Lisbon authorize expenditures of $43,260 from the school department capital reserve fund to be applied to the following plant maintenance and remodeling expenses in the fiscal year 2016? Lisbon School Department budget, initial payment for the guaranteed performance contract lease not covered by energy savings. School recommends $43,260.
I'd open the floor for a motion
I'll make the motion.
to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed.
And Article 20, please.
Shall the council of the town of Lisbon authorize expenditures of $255,742 in excess proceeds from bonds issued by the town of Lisbon for the construction of a new gym at Lisbon High School to be applied to the debt service on the Lisbon High School gym bond? School committee recommends $255,742.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that the town of Lisbon authorize the expenditure of $0.00 in the excess proceeds from the bond issued by the town of Lisbon for the construction of the new gym.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second from Councilor Bickford. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And Article 21, please.
Article 21, shall the council of the town of Lisbon authorize expenditure of $48,809 in excess proceeds from bonds issued by the town of Lisbon for the construction of a new track at Lisbon High School to be applied to the debt service on the Lisbon High track bond? School committee recommends $48,809.
I would make a motion to authorize the expenditure of $0.00 for the Lisbon High School to be applied to the debt service of the Lisbon track bond. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I think it's important. I would like to take Mr. Karras and Municipal Bond Bank's approach and to apply this to the wireless internet project. I think that's a valid approach and a good approach to be used, and we can take care of that at a later date. All those in favor?
5, 6. Order passed, 6-0.
And now would like to go back to Article 16, please.
Article 16, to see if the council will authorize the Lisbon School Department to appropriate $152,858 for adult education and raise $106,878 as the local share, with authorization to expend any additional incidental or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the adult education program. The school committee recommends yes.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion for yes.
Is there a second? Second from Councilor Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And Article 17, please.
To see what sum the council will authorize the Lisbon School Department to expend for adult education, school committee recommends yes. $168,672.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept.
In the amount presented from the school.
Yes, 168,672.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
6-0. Order passed.
And Article 18, please.
In addition to amounts approved in the preceding articles, shall the council authorize the Lisbon School Committee to expend sums as may be received from federal or state grants or programs or other sources during the fiscal year for school purposes, provided that such grants, programs, or other sources do not require the expenditure of other funds not previously appropriated. School committee recommends yes.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to recommend yes.
Is there a second? We have from second from Councilor Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-0. Order passed.
Article 15, please.
To see what sum the council will authorize the Lisbon School Committee to expend for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2015 and ending June 30, 2016 from the town's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, non-state funded school construction projects, additional local funds for school purposes under the Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A, Section 15690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidy, and other receipts for the support of schools. School committee recommends $15,301,066.
I'd offer a motion for the total to amount to $14,884,173. Is there a second to my motion?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
5 yes. All those opposed? 5 to 1. Order passed.
Now, I'd like to go to Articles 1 through 11. I would suggest grouping them if,
Oh, we have 5 minutes. We probably can.
We can finish this one. Yep.
Okay.
you don't have to read all of them if you don't
Article
want.
1 through 11. Do you
Yeah.
have a total amount?
I would offer a motion to reject Articles 1 through 11, as we have altered the total of the school budget and allow the school committee to dictate where and how much they expend on each article, 1 through 11. Is there a motion? Is there a second to my motion?
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor of rejecting Articles 1 through 11?
5 yes. All those opposed? 5-1. Order passed.
And Madam Clerk, I believe that we have addressed all of the articles. Is that correct?
We can double check that when we take a recess.
Okay. At this point, we'll take a recess and we'll return to wrap up the rest of the meeting. I don't want you to melt, Greg.
I won't melt, I guarantee that.
All right.
July 21, 2015, convened.
I will bring the meeting back to order. Please find your seats. Madam Clerk, if we could start back off with item 206.
Yes, Order 2015-206, School Budget Validation Referendum Warrant.
In our packet, we have the budget validation referendum. It has the question if the voters approve it or not, and if they voted no, was it too low, or too high? I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept it. Accept it the way it is.
Is there a second to the motion? Councilman Mativier seconds. Any discussion? All good? All those in favor of the motion?
5 yes. Any opposed? 5-1. Order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-207 to set the registrar hours and the times to cast absentee ballots. The recommendation for the registrar hours are August 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 during regular office hours, and on Election Day, August the 11th, during the polling hours from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The following items appear on the warrant: casting the absentees on Election Day at 7, 8, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., 4, 5, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on Election Day in accordance with Title 21A, Section 759, Section 7, subsection 7. Polling hours 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and the locations at the usual places. District 1, Superintendent Central Office Building Gymnasium, and District 2, the MTM Center Gymnasium.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept it.
Is there a second to the motion? Second from Councilman Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
6, order passed, 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-208, the policy and procedures for the fiscal administration of school accounts, payable and payroll.
This is just a slight amendment to the policy that we just recently passed. And what we want to do is, there will be instances where a supplemental payroll or accounts payable warrant will be necessary. And when that happens, a manual signature may be applied by the appropriate signing authority. So this is just going to allow a manual signature instead of my or Ed's electronic signature. So we just wanted to insert that because that will happen from time to time.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Is there a second? Motion and second from Councilman Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
6-0, order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-209, MMA's annual election of vice president and executive committee members.
In our packet, we have the printout from MMA for Vice President. For one-year term, we have Lori Smith, the Town Manager of Kennebunkport. She has a resume attached, and that she's the only candidate, and we have to vote for one. And then for directors, for three-year term, we have to vote for three. We do have three. Bill Brigio, City Manager of Augusta, Michael Crocker, Town Manager of Glenburn, and Marion Moore, the Mayor of Calais. Open the floor for a motion.
Vote on all of them at once?
Yep.
I'll make the motion to vote on for all of them at once.
Is there a second? Second, Councilman Mattivi. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0. And this would need your signatures. We'll circulate that.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-210, DEP consent agreement.
We will actually be going in executive session later on this evening, and we'll be addressing that when we come out, hopefully.
All right, so we move to the next item. Order 2015-211, revaluation decision.
We will also be going into executive session for 211. Hopefully, we'll have a vote when we return.
All right, so we move to the next one. Order 2015-212, award real estate agent bid.
I sent out bids to 8 real estate agencies, and we received 2 back, one from Coldwell Banker, I left the D out in that, and the other one from Haggerty Realty. They both have a commission of 10%. My recommendation is to award the real estate agent bid to Haggerty Realty, as they have a local preference per our purchasing policy.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the bid from Haggerty Realty.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-213, the interlocal agreement for code enforcement and stormwater services.
We will also be in executive session for this. Hopefully, we'll have a vote when we return.
The next item is Order 2015-213A, municipal agent designation.
I don't have my updated summary in front of me, but with the resignation of Gail Pinard, who is currently the municipal agent, we need to designate another one to be approved by the Secretary of State in order for us to continue issuing plates and registrations. And we do have a part-time staffer on staff that is a municipal agent, and that's Ruth Lyons. And at this time, I would recommend that you designate her to the Secretary of State until Haley McCrader gets her training so that she can become the next municipal agent.
Open the floor for a motion. Ruth Lyons.
Ruth Lyons.
I recommend that we accept Ruth Lyons for the Secretary of State for
Municipal agent.
municipal agent.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I thank Ruth for taking on this role for us in the meantime. All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Under other business, the town manager's report.
I just want to take the time to thank everybody that worked diligently and tirelessly to make another successful Moxie Festival event. You know, a lot of people that are part of the Moxie Committee and a lot of other volunteers are the ones that really pull it off, and without them, we wouldn't have a successful event, and we had a great successful event again this year. I see Cassie Colby sitting up in the audience, and she was there for like 3 days straight without any sleep, and it's a lot of work, and I would like to thank you for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Is audience participation and response for new items.
Open the floor for audience participation for new items. I'd ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. State your name and address for the record. Mr. Kaler.
Good evening. Bob Kaler, 28 Dumas Street. A couple questions and then one just sort of note for the record. One, I just wanted to follow up on the question that was posed by Mr. Albert regarding attorney's fees, and I just wanted to check to see if that's something that the council or town manager or finance director plan to provide, or would we need to do freedom of access to get that information. Beyond that, not necessarily now, but trying to get a sense of what's information that we can reasonably expect versus freedom of access, and I don't know how that's determined. So that's a question that a number of people have had. So at some point, that would be helpful information for people to have to know to save time. And let's see, freedom of access. In terms of the notes, and again, I may have misunderstood the finance director, but one thing, just sort of a correction for the minutes that we've talked about. During the public hearings for the building projects, it was regularly announced that any sort of proceeds not spent on the project would be spent to pay down the debt, and anyone that was, I know Ed wasn't here then, but those that went to those informational meetings, it was publicly stated, so anyone that attended those heard that at every meeting. So that's more just for the minutes. Public hearing. So really just curious. Oh, the last thing, and Diane, I want to thank you for helping me sort of find, there's the meeting rules and then there's the sort of rules of decorum, which took me a little bit of digging to get to. But at the beginning of this, you know, each agenda has the town clerk reading of the minute rules, and I know we're all busy and we have those things to do. But I would strongly encourage everyone to review the rules of decorum, because regardless of people's sort of personal feelings, a number of these meetings have gone places they absolutely didn't need to go. So, and Dylan, I know in the past, and I've said this before, there are times when you've gavelled down people, and rightfully so. But we need to hold ourselves publicly to that level of accountability, and I don't think that happens enough.
Thank you. Ms. Austin.
Yes, I would like to kind of to one of the pieces that during all of the public hearings, it was stated that bond proceeds would go back to pay debt service. That was on record in many of the videotapes that have been taped regarding those public meetings. The other thing is it was referenced that the Attorney General's office information was passed on to the finance director. It was started with a complaint from the town, from the AG's office that contacted the superintendent, and the superintendent answered all the questions that the AG's office asked, and that through that conversation, Mr. Green let them know that per our lawsuit, there was an agreement with the contractor that the meetings would be run by them, and that it is not a school meeting per se, that it was, they schedule the meetings, they hold the meeting minutes, and they run the meetings themselves. So I just wanted to make sure that it was out there that it was the AG's contact was not from the school department that was initiated. It was the AG's office said that someone from the town called to complain. So he's the one that, or they are the one that contacted Superintendent Green, who then had conversations with them. And I asked that the information that the AG provided be forwarded on to the finance director.
Thank you. Next person, please. See none? All right. Just briefly respond. Mr. Kaler, as we have discussed, and I believe the town manager has also told you, you can most definitely, and anyone can put in a freedom of access request for the all town attorney bills. You are entitled to that information. It might not be the information you want because of how the process is broken out, but you are entitled to those bills. Information that's accessible with or without a FOIA, there's really no defined line. I know the town manager, if something is accessible to her right away, she'll provide that if you walk in her office, and if not, then she asks for you to put in a FOIA request. We've had a previous administration that any little thing you asked for as a citizen, you had to put in a FOIA request. And we have Mr. Fillmore can testify to that one. But if you have a few more questions, you can ask the town manager. She'll be more than happy to explain more to you. What else? Appreciate your comment on meeting decorum. And Mr. Fillmore also brought it up, meeting decorum to me during our second break. You are right. Some meetings have gone further than they should, and there's a reason why meetings are run the way they are now. And we all monitor decorum very appropriately. And Ms. Austin, you also mentioned that bond proceeds will go back to debt service. I do not remember that conversation, and I don't know what the rest of the council would have to say, but I guess I'll have to go back and review some of the videos to see what I can find. In your complaint regarding from the AG's office, I did see that chain of emails come through, and I appreciate you asking for that to be forwarded on. In a conversation I saw between the town manager and Mr. Green, he stated that a citizen contacted the Attorney General's office because they to see who could attend the construction meeting. So I think it's important to clarify. Sometimes when you say the town, someone could think the administration, but to my knowledge, the administration did not contact the Attorney General's office until we saw this rendered opinion. So I think it's important to know that it was a citizen or someone in our community. It wasn't the administration that contacted the AG's office. And that being said, go to the next item, please.
Under appointments, Order 2015-214, appoint constables for ACE Security. Applicants are Paul Carpentier, Harry Darling, and Sean Scully.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion. Appoint Paul Carpenter, Harry Darling, and Sheen Scully.
Is there a second to the motion? Second, Council Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
6-0, order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-215, appoint RLF, stands for Revolving Loan Fund, committee members, Dan Stockford, Ed Carras, and Diane Barnes.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept Dan Stockford, Ed Carreras, and Diane Barnes for the revolving loan.
Is there a second to the motion? Second. We have some second from Council Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-216 to reappoint Ethics Panel member, Ross Cunningham.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'd be happy to reappoint Ross Cunningham as a ethics panel member.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-217 to appoint cemetery committee members. I believe you had 3 applications. Did you need me to read the names?
Yes, please.
Bob Packard, Ella Packard, and Lucy Couture.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the 3 people.
Is there a second? Second, Council Mativier. Any discussion? One question I had was, how many members do we have open for that committee? I know it's new. 5. 2 alternates. Okay, so we still have openings.
We did have one applicant coming in for the alternate position.
Okay, perfect. All those in favor of the motion?
6-0.
And the next item, please.
Council communications.
Open the floor for any councilor communications. Start down with Councilor Garrison. Do you have anything? All right. Councilor Mativier. Councilor Bickford.
Only thing, it was a good Moxie Day parade. I had a good time while I was there.
Perfect. Councilor Crafts. Councilor Brunel.
All set.
Perfect. I do have a couple of things. Over the past couple of months, we've said that we'll talk about this, talk about this, talk about this in July. In August, we've come to that point. So we'll need, I sat down with the manager the other day. We made a list of all the open-ended topics that have come up. and we believe we'll need to have 2 or 3 workshops to discuss the topics. We have an extensive list, approximately 12 different topics that are still open. So I was wondering if the council would like to have a workshop next Tuesday to discuss 4 of the items. If that would work for everybody. All right. So we'll set a workshop for next Tuesday at 7 o'clock at the town office. I also want to thank everybody that helped out with the Moxie Festival. It was good. I was in town this year. Typically, I'm on vacation. It was a great time. It was been 2 years since I've been able to attend, so it was good to be back here. I also wanted to Councillor Lunt is absent tonight. He has come down with a pretty serious illness. He's been in the hospital, so I wish him a speedy recovery so he can join us very soon at our council meetings. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-218 to go into executive session for 1 MRSA Section 405-6E, consultations with legal counsel.
To open the floor to go in for motion.
I'll make the motion to go into executive session.
Is there a second to the motion? Second from Councilor Garrison. Just so folks know that possibly we'll have 3 votes to follow this evening. All those in favor of the motion?
Order passed, 6-0.
Yes. Yes, it will. All set. Are you all set, 12?
Purple.
All right, I will bring the Lisbon Town Council meeting back to order. We came out of executive session with Councilor Garrison making a motion, second by Councilor Bickford at 11:17. If we can move back to item 2015-210 DEP consent agreement, please.
2015-2010 DEP consent agreement.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion
To accept?
to accept.
Is there a second?
If that's a motion to approve the DEP.
And to authorize the town manager to sign.
Okay.
Seconded by Eric.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Is that a 6-0? Okay. Order passed.
And we will now go to 2015-211 revaluation decision.
Vote 2015-211, the revaluation decision.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll move to accept the amended agreement as presented.
We have a motion to accept the amended agreement as presented from Councilor Garrison. Is there a second? We have a second from Councilor Mativier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Vote 6-0.
And the other item we left off was item 2015-213, interlocal agreement for code enforcement and stormwater services. We will table this to another agenda.
Okay.
Or move it to another agenda, I should say.
Yeah, move it to a future agenda.
Correct. And that will bring us back to number 13, adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Discussion, all those in favor? Meeting adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.